A soap factory had a problem. Sometimes empty boxes were being shipped out without soap bars inside. This was a quality issue that was affecting their relationships with buyers and distributors. So the CEO brought together his top team to solve it. 6 months and $8 million later, they came up with a solution. A high-tech scale system that would beep and flash lights whenever a box was too light. The assembly line would stop, a worker would remove the defective box, and then restart the line. Everyone was thrilled. It was on time, on budget, and it worked. A few weeks later, the CEO reviewed the report. Since the new system was implemented, no empty boxes had been shipped. A dozen defective boxes were removed each day, and customer complaints were practically non-existent. The company was even gaining market share. He thought the $8 million was well spent. But then something odd happened. After 3 weeks, the number of defective boxes dropped to 0. Concerned, the CEO filed a bug report. The engineers investigated and confirmed that the system was working perfectly. The boxes that reached the scales were all good. Confused, the CEO decided to visit the factory and see for himself. He stood near the scales and noticed something strange. Just before the scale, there was a $20 desk fan blowing empty boxes off the conveyor and into a bin. He turned to the supervisor and asked, "What's going on here?" The supervisor shrugged. "Oh, that's Bert, the kid from maintenance. He got tired of walking over every time the bell rang, so he set up the fan to do it instead." A factory timekeeper is responsible for blowing the whistle at exactly noon for the lunch break. Every day, she checks her watch, and the moment it strikes 12 p.m., she blows the whistle. One day, she accidentally bumps her watch against something and worries that it might be off. Wanting to ensure accuracy, she visits a clockmaker to have it properly set. At the shop, she explains her job and stresses how important it is for her watch to keep perfect time. The clockmaker reassures her, saying, "No need to worry. I set my watch by the clocks in the back, and I can guarantee they're accurate. I adjust them every Sunday when the church bells ring at 6 a.m. Relieved, she leaves the shop, but a question nags at her. How does the church know exactly when it's 6 a.m.? Curious, she visits the church and asks the bell ringer how he ensures the bells chime at the right time. The bell ringer smiles and says, "Oh, that's easy. I ring the bells the moment my watch hits 6 a.m. "But how do you know your watch is accurate?" she presses. He nods confidently. "I check it every day at noon, right when the factory whistle blows." One Sunday morning, a young man strolls confidently into a local coffee shop. Dressed sharply, he surveys the place with an air of superiority before snapping his fingers for a waiter. "I'll have your freshest coffee," he demands. "None of that muddy stuff you probably served from yesterday's leftovers." The waiter smiles. "Sir, we brew fresh coffee multiple times a day." "I'll believe it when I taste it." The man scoffs. "I'm from New York. I know good coffee. I doubt you do, so at least make a fresh batch for me." He waves the waiter away. The waiter returns with a steaming cup. The man takes a sip and immediately scowls. "Just as I thought. Not fresh. Try again." Sighing, the waiter disappears into the kitchen, taking his time before returning with another cup, even more aromatic than before. The man takes a sip and spits it out in disgust. "This is even worse. It tastes like mud." The waiter blinks, then shrugs. "Well, sir, it is fresh ground." Mitch was having a terrible day at the track, losing bet after bet, when he noticed an old priest step onto the field and gently bless the forehead of one of the horses lining up for the 4th race. Curious, Mitch watched as the race began, and to his amazement, the blessed horse, a total long shot, won. For the next race, Mitch kept his eyes glued to the priest. Sure enough, the old man stepped onto the track again and blessed another horse. Without hesitation, Mitch rushed to the betting window and placed a small bet. Once again, the horse won. Now convinced he had cracked the system, Mitch increased his bets race after race, watching as every horse the priest blessed came in first. By the final race, he had won a fortune. Thinking his wildest dreams were about to come true, he sprinted to the ATM, withdrew all his savings, and eagerly watched the priest bless the last horse, a tired old nag with the longest odds of the day. But this time, the priest went further. He blessed the horse's forehead, eyes, ears, and even its hooves. Mitch was all in. He bet everything he had on the old nag. The race started, and to his horror, the horse didn't just lose. It came in dead last. Devastated, Mitch stormed down to the track and confronted the priest. "Father! What happened? Every horse you blessed today won until now. I just lost everything." The priest sighed and patted Mitch on the shoulder. "Son, that's the problem with people like you. You can't tell the difference between a simple blessing and last rites." A curious young boy approached his brother's wife and asked, "Why do you always jump on top of my brother every day?" With a straight face, the sister-in-law replied, "Oh, that's to get the air out of his stomach." The young boy nodded, but then added, "Well, it doesn't seem to be working. The aunt next door keeps coming over and she's refilling the air every day." A stockbroker is walking past a lemonade stand when a little girl calls out, "Hey, mister, want some lemonade?" The stockbroker, stepping out of his shiny BMW in a sharp suit, is about to walk past, but then does a double take at the sign. "Lemonade, $50. Hold up, kid. You mean 50 cents, right? He says. The little girl shakes her head confidently. Nope, 50 bucks. I'm raising money for space camp. The stockbroker pauses, impressed by the ambition, but shakes his head. Kid, I admire the hustle, but you've got to charge what people are willing to pay. No one's buying lemonade for 50 bucks. Now, what do you think is a fair price? The girl smiles brightly. 50 bucks, mister? The stockbroker sighs, rolling his eyes. Okay, but let me teach you a little business. You can't make a profit if no one's paying your price. Do you have anything else for sale? The little girl lights up. Homemade brownies, 50 cents each. The stockbroker winces. Look, I've got an MBA from Wharton. Let me explain. Each cup of lemonade probably costs you about 50 cents, right? Including the stand's margin cost. I'll give you 10 times that amount to show you about markup. The girl shakes her head. No thanks, mister. I'll stick with 50 bucks. Frustrated but determined, the stockbroker hands her $1. Fine. I'll buy 2 of your brownies, although you're definitely losing money on them. I'm not buying any of your overpriced lemonade, but I'm trying to teach you something here. The girl happily takes the $1, placing 10 brownies on a plate. Just to make his point, the stockbroker grabs one and takes a big bite. A few moments later, he's coughing and gagging. What on earth did you put in these? With a proud grin, the little girl announces, It's my special recipe. Eggs, flour, butter, cocoa, sawdust, and goat pellets. The stockbroker's face turns green. This is awful. I need to get this taste out of my mouth. The girl smiles wider, pulls out a jar of $50 bills, and tilts her head. You want some lemonade? A businessman, feeling unfulfilled, visits a fortune teller to ask about changing careers. He sits down and says, I'm thinking of becoming an artist. What does my future look like? The fortune teller pulls out a large pipe, takes a deep hit, gazes into her crystal ball, and says, Dim and poor. Don't bother. Disappointed, he asks, What about carpentry? Another hit, another gaze. Better, but still not great. Frustrated, he asks, All right, what if I became an accountant? The fortune teller takes a final drag, stares into the crystal ball, and says, Best choice so far, but don't you have bigger dreams? The businessman sighs. Thanks, madam. How much do I owe you? She exhales a cloud of smoke and says, $3,000. $3,000? But I was only here for a few minutes. She gestures to her pipe. This stuff's not cheap, but to be honest, I keep most of it. You're a businessman, you understand. The man storms home and tells his wife, Honey, I'm going into the fortune-telling business. Why is that? She asks. He grins. The high profit margin. Economic systems explained with cows' traditional capitalism. You have 2 cows. You sell one and buy a bull. Your herd multiplies and the economy grows. You sell the herd and retire comfortably. Socialism. You have 2 cows. The government takes one and gives it to your neighbor who doesn't know how to milk it. Communism. You have 2 cows. The government takes both, gives you a ration of milk, and bans private cow ownership. Fascism, you have 2 cows. The government takes both and sells you overpriced, low-quality milk while blaming foreigners for the milk shortage. Nazism, you have 2 cows. The government takes both and then takes you. Bureaucratism, you have 2 cows. The government regulates the milk industry, taxes you for cow emissions, and makes you fill out 37 forms to milk them. Eventually, one cow dies, the other stops producing milk, and a committee is formed to investigate. Venture capitalism, you have 2 cows. You sell 3 to your publicly traded company, take out loans against the 4 cows you don't own, declare bankruptcy, and cash out your stock options. Private equity. You have 2 cows. A hedge fund buys them, fires you, sells off the milk, leases back the barn at triple the price, and leaves the cows in debt. Silicon Valley startup. You have 2 cows. You create an app promising disruptive AI-powered milk, get $50 million in VC funding, never produce any milk, and exit with a $2 billion valuation. Cryptocurrency, you have 2 cows. You tokenize them as Cowcoin, hype them up on Twitter, and sell them for Bitcoin. When the market crashes, you realize you now own 0 cows. Inflation, you have 2 cows. The price of milk doubles overnight, but your paycheck stays the same. Modern banking. You have 2 cows. The bank repossesses both because you missed a payment on an unrelated tractor, then gets bailed out by the government. A librarian is jolted awake in the middle of the night by a ringing phone. Groggy and irritated, he picks up. What time does the library open? A man asks. Annoyed, the librarian rubs his eyes and snaps, 9 a.m. And why on earth are you calling me at this hour just to ask that? Not until 9 a.m. The man sighs, sounding disappointed. Now fuming, the librarian barks, No, not until 9, and you'll just have to wait like everyone else. A long pause. Then the man mutters sadly, Who said I wanted to get in? I want to get out.